What if betrayal wasn't the end of your story, but the beginning of who you were always meant to be? Think about that for a second. Most of us are raised to believe that when someone betrays us, when someone walks away, lies to us, or abandons us, it means we've failed. We think it proves we weren't enough, that somehow we deserved it. And in that pain, our first instinct is often to scream, to lash out, to prove them wrong in front of the world. But the Stoics knew something most people still don't understand. The deepest revenge is never loud. It's not in shouting, not in fighting, not in trying to make them see what they lost. The deepest revenge is silence. It's the calm strength of standing so still, so unshaken, that your very presence unsettles the people who once thought they could move you. Betrayal doesn't break you. It reveals you. It strips away illusions, fake promises, false friends, and it leaves behind something raw, something real. It leaves behind you. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds beautiful in theory. What about the sleepless nights, the unanswered questions, the way your chest feels like it's been ripped open? We've all been there. I have too. Maybe you trusted someone with everything, only to watch them disappear when you needed them most. Maybe you loved deeply, only to be replaced. Maybe family, the very people who were supposed to protect you, turned their backs. And when that happens, the instinct is to ask, but here's the truth. That question will never give you peace, because betrayal is never about your worth. It's about their character, and more importantly, it's about your awakening. What if instead of asking, why did they do this to me? You asked, what have I now been shown? That's a Stoic shift. That's how pain turns into clarity. Because betrayal is not random. It's reality doing you a favor. It's the mask slipping off. It's the truth revealing itself, even if it hurts. And yes, it hurts. Let's not pretend otherwise. Stoicism isn't about pretending you're made of stone. It's about feeling the sting, but refusing to be ruled by it. The Stoics teach us that pain wakes you up, but harm is what distorts you. Betrayal is pain, but it doesn't have to harm you unless you let it twist who you are. Think about it like this. When someone betrays you, they're not destroying you. They're cleaning your path. They're removing themselves from a future they don't belong to. And the silence that follows your silence, your stillness, becomes the loudest thing they'll ever hear. Have you ever noticed how absence weighs more than anger? Someone can scream at you, and you might forget their words. But when someone withdraws completely, when they no longer give you access to their energy, their time, their peace, that absence is unforgettable. That's why the Stoics believe the greatest strength is in self-mastery. Because when you stop reacting, when you stop playing the game of retaliation, let me ask you this. What's more powerful, proving them wrong in front of a crowd, or rebuilding yourself so completely that their opinion no longer matters? What's louder, shouting your pain on social media, or living in such peace that your silence terrifies them? This is what I call Stoic revenge. It's not about punishing them. It's about mastering yourself. And when you do that, something unexpected happens. The very people who thought they broke you begin to feel your absence more than they ever felt your presence. They realize that the peace they once mistook for weakness is now the fortress they can no longer enter. I want you to imagine this. They lied. They left. You don't react. You don't post about it. You don't call to explain. You don't defend yourself in front of anyone. You simply rebuild in silence. That's not weakness. That's control. That's discipline. And here's the irony. In that silence, they feel it. They feel your absence like a silence that screams. They start to realize they no longer have access to you. Not your anger, not your forgiveness, not your energy. And that, my friend, is the kind of consequence no revenge plot could ever match. Because most people think revenge looks like success in front of others. But the Stoics knew the truth. The best revenge is peace. The kind of peace where you no longer flinch at their name, no longer lose sleep, replaying their betrayal. No longer waste energy trying to make them understand. When you reach that point, you don't need closure. You don't need apologies. You don't even need them to notice your growth, because your growth was never for them. It was for you. This is the opening of a new chapter. Betrayal doesn't end your story. It ends their role in it. And once they're gone, once the illusion is shattered, you get to see yourself more clearly than ever before. You get to stand up, not as the broken version of who you were, but as the refined version of who you're becoming. And here's the beautiful part. They will never see it coming. They expected anger. They expected collapse. They expected you to chase them, defend yourself, or try to fix what they broke. But when you remain silent, when you rise without announcement, when you rebuild without needing to broadcast it, they have no idea what to do with that. That's why silence is powerful. That's why standing still, unshaken, is more unsettling than shouting ever could be. So if you've been betrayed, if you're still carrying that weight, let me tell you this. Don't waste your energy plotting revenge. Don't waste your peace trying to explain yourself. Use that energy to rise. Use that silence to rebuild. Because one day, you'll look back and realize their betrayal wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a stronger, sharper, more unshakable you. And when that day comes, when you no longer need them to understand, when you no longer need to prove anything at all, you'll know what true Stoic power feels like. Not noise, not revenge, but transformation. That's how you stand after betrayal. That's how you win without fighting. That's how you become untouchable. What if betrayal wasn't a curse at all, but a hidden gift? I know that sounds almost impossible to believe, especially when your chest is tight, when your nights feel endless, when you replay the moment someone turned their back on you. Betrayal feels like a knife. But what if that knife didn't kill you? What if it cut through the fog and revealed the truth? That's the Stoic way of seeing it. Betrayal is not the end. It is the moment of clarity. It's when the mist finally lifts, when illusions collapse and reality stands uncovered. You don't lose in betrayal. You see people as they truly are. And more importantly, you see yourself more clearly than ever before. Think back to your own life. Maybe it was a friend who stayed silent when you needed their voice the most. Maybe it was a lover who walked away the moment love became inconvenient. Maybe it was even family, the very people who were supposed to stay and yet they didn't. You wondered, was I not enough? But here's the shift. Instead of asking, why did they do this to me? What if you asked, what have I just been shown? That's the question the Stoics would ask. Because betrayal is never random. It's never just an accident. It's the mask slipping. It's life doing you a favor, clearing out the people who cannot walk the path you're meant to walk. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed." And that's the heart of it. Betrayal is a form of truth. It hurts, yes, but it doesn't have to harm. Pain wakes you, harm distorts you, and the choice whether it becomes pain or harm belongs to you. Here's a story. A young man, ambitious and driven, started a business with someone he trusted. For months, they worked side by side, building something they believed in. But one day, the partner lied, stole, and destroyed what they had built together. The young man felt like a fool. His friends told him, "See, you should have never trusted in the first place." Now, he had two options. He could let betrayal poison him, close him off forever, convince him that people are not worth trusting, or he could see it differently. He saw the betrayal not as the end, but as instruction. He learned, he rebuilt. Wiser this time, more cautious, yes, but not bitter. His next project succeeded, not just because of profit, but because now he carried discernment. He didn't just build a business, he built character. That's the difference. Betrayal didn't destroy him, it refined him, and that's what it can do for you. Epictetus taught that some things are in our control and some are not. What others do, their lies, their envy, their cowardice that's not in your control. But how you rise from it, what you choose to extract from the rubble, that's yours to command. So here's the real question. Will you let betrayal make you smaller, or will you let it make you sharper? Let's be honest. When someone betrays you, it feels personal. It feels like proof that you were weak, that you misjudged, that you weren't enough. But the truth is the opposite. Betrayal isn't evidence of your weakness. It's evidence of their inability to walk with your strength. It's not a loss. It's a filter. It purifies your circle. And maybe that's what you needed. Because isn't it better to know now who doesn't belong than to drag them into the future you're meant to build? The Stoics remind us that pain is unavoidable, but harm is optional. Pain comes when someone betrays you, and it should, because you're human, not made of stone. But harm comes when you let that betrayal twist you, close your heart, and turn you bitter. Don't let them harm you twice. Let the first wound be the last. Instead of obsessing over what was lost, ask, maybe you've gained truth. Maybe you've gained freedom. Maybe you've gained the wisdom to no longer wait for the approval of cowards. That's what betrayal offers, if you let it. Let me put it like this. Betrayal is not the end of your trust. It's the end of your illusion. It's the end of your illusion, and that is not weakness. That is clarity. But I know clarity isn't comfortable. It's not a warm blanket. It's the cold morning air that wakes you up. And sometimes you'd rather go back to sleep, back into the fog of denial, back into pretending that those people cared as much as you did. But comfort never reveals the truth. Only pain does. And when the fog lifts, when the truth stands bare, you finally know who you are and who they were. The Stoics didn't say, don't feel. They said, don't be ruled by what you feel. So feel the sting, acknowledge it, but then rise above it, use it, let it train you. Because when betrayal comes, and it will, to every human life, it hands you an opportunity, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. And here's the hidden blessing. When you rise, when you rebuild, when you walk forward refined by betrayal, you don't just become stronger. You become unshakable. Because you've seen the mask slip, you've seen reality. And once you've seen the truth, you can never be fooled in the same way again. That's the gift betrayal carries in its disguise. That's the clarity no one wants, but everyone needs. So the next time someone betrays you, don't ask, why me? Ask instead, what did I just gain? Because betrayal, in the Stoic view, is never the end. It is the doorway. And once you walk through it, you will never be the same again. Why did they turn on you? Why did the people you trusted most, the ones you poured your energy, your love, your loyalty into, suddenly walk away, betray you, or reject you? We usually think it's because of our weakness. We assume it's because we weren't enough, that maybe if we had been smarter, kinder, more lovable, they would have stayed. What if they left not because of your weakness? Let's pause and think about this. True betrayal rarely happens when you are at your lowest. It happens when you start standing taller, when you begin setting boundaries, when you no longer bend yourself just to keep others comfortable. That's when people get uncomfortable. That's when people walk away. Not because you were broken, but because you were breaking away. The Stoics understood this irony well. They taught that no insult, no betrayal, no rejection can actually harm us unless we hand over our power to it. Epictetus once said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. In other words, the real danger is not in what they did. It's in whether we allow it to define us. But here's the twist. When you started to grow, when you started to claim your calm, your patience, your self-respect, that's when they felt exposed. Your silence made them restless. Your boundaries made them insecure. Your refusal to beg for approval showed them a mirror they didn't want to look into. They didn't reject your weakness. They rejected your strength. Let me give you a story. There was a woman who spent years trying to be everything to everyone. She was always kind, always available, always agreeable. She bent over backwards to keep the peace, and still she was betrayed. She was left without explanation. She was even blamed for things she never did. At first, she collapsed. The pain nearly crushed her. But then something shifted. One day she looked in the mirror and said, "Enough. No more giving without return. No more tolerating what insulted her dignity. No more staying silent just to be seen as nice." And something incredible happened. Without rage, without revenge, she changed. Her voice became firmer. Her walk became steadier. Her boundaries became unshakable. She didn't become someone new. She returned to who she had always been, the self that had been buried under years of compromise. That is the power they feared. And maybe you've experienced this too. Maybe you were always the one apologizing for being too much or not enough. Maybe you were the one shrinking yourself so others could feel tall. And then the betrayal came. And it hurt, yes, but it also woke you up. For the first time, you stopped asking to be chosen, and you started choosing yourself. That's the moment the balance shifts. That's when the storm becomes your teacher. Because Stoicism doesn't say you should suppress your emotions, pretend you don't feel, or turn into stone. No. Stoicism says you should channel the storm. You acknowledge what happened. You feel it fully. And then you ask the most important question. What now? Do you let anger consume you? Or do you let indifference liberate you? See, indifference, that calm refusal to be shaken, burns hotter than any rage ever could. Anger still gives them power because it means they can control your reactions. But indifference shows them that their betrayal no longer has the ability to touch your core. That silence, that composure, that unbothered presence, it terrifies them. And here's why. When you stop being controlled by your emotions, you become unshakable. You are no longer on their stage. They don't know how to fight someone who doesn't flinch. They don't know what to do with someone who no longer needs their approval, their apology, or their attention. Ask yourself this. Have you ever noticed how unsettling it is when someone doesn't react the way you expected? You shout, and they remain calm. You provoke, and they don't flinch. You expect drama, and they give you silence. It throws you off balance, doesn't it? That's the very effect your indifference has on those who betrayed you. They expected anger. They expected tears. They expected you to beg. But what they never expected was your strength, the strength you forgot you had. The woman in the story didn't become cold. She became clear. She didn't stop feeling. She simply stopped being ruled by those feelings. That is Stoic mastery, and that's what you're being invited into. Here's the truth. You're not cold. You're conscious. You're not heartless. You're disciplined. You're not weak for being hurt. You're strong for refusing to stay hurt. And that is exactly what frightens those who betrayed you. Because betrayal exposes not just who they are, but who you are becoming. It strips away illusions about loyalty, about love, about friendship. And beneath all the loss, you find something steady. The core of your character. The part of you that doesn't need to shout. The part of you that no longer softens your truth just to keep the peace. This is what they feared from the very beginning. Not your collapse, but your rise. So if you've been betrayed, remember this. It wasn't your weakness that made them walk away. It was your strength. It was your calm. It was your dignity. It was the version of you that doesn't beg, that doesn't cling. And that version of you, the one that survives the storm without bitterness, that's the version they never wanted to face. So let them fear it. Let them wonder. Let them sit with the silence they created. And while they're lost in confusion, you stand firm. You grow. You reclaim the strength you forgot was always yours. That's the Stoic path. That's the real revenge. Not loud, not vengeful, but powerful beyond their comprehension. Most people think silence means weakness. They think silence means retreat, defeat, or giving up. But a Stoic knows better. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is not absence, it's arrival. There's a kind of silence that speaks louder than 1,000 words. A silence that unsettles your enemies, confuses your betrayers, and reminds you of who truly holds the power. It's not silence born of fear. It's silence born of mastery. Ask yourself this. After someone betrayed you, after they spread lies, mocked you, or tried to pull you into their chaos, what was your first instinct? You wanted to respond, to explain, to defend your reputation, to correct the story. That's natural. But here's the hard truth. Will your reaction really change anything? Or will it only feed the fire? That's the trap. Betrayal sets the stage and invites you to perform. They expect anger. They expect drama. They expect a storm. And the moment you step onto that stage, you're already playing by their rules. But what if you refused? What if you chose silence instead? That's what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that includes the way you speak or don't speak. When you hold your tongue, when you withdraw into calm, you send a message far louder than shouting ever could. You signal discipline, focus, control. There's a story of a man whose closest friend betrayed him. This friend spread lies, mocked him in public, and tried to ruin his reputation. Everyone waited for the explosion. They expected rage. They expected a public rebuttal. But the man gave none. He chose silence. Not because he was afraid, but because he was clear. He knew the truth didn't need defense. And what happened? Within a year, the betrayer unraveled. People saw through the mask. The lies collapsed on their own. And the man? He had grown quietly, powerfully. He didn't just win. He transcended the game. That's what silence does. It makes you invisible to petty attacks and invincible to personal ones. Because once you've mastered the ability to hold your fire, your enemies burn themselves out trying to provoke you. Seneca once wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And silence is self-mastery in its purest form. But let's be clear, Stoic silence is not passive. It's not suppression. It's not sitting in the corner pretending you don't care. It's active restraint. It's deliberate. It's choosing not to speak until your words serve your virtue, not your ego. It's holding your center while the world spins around you. Think of it like this. When they shout, accuse, or mock, you remain still. Not because you've lost, but because you've already won the inner battle. When you are silent, you can finally hear the truth. Not their version, but yours. You hear your own voice, unfiltered by rage. You see your own direction, unclouded by their chaos. And here's the part they never expect. They thought your silence was emptiness. While they were rehearsing more drama, you were sharpening your vision. You were rising without announcement. That's why silence terrifies them. It makes them irrelevant. It removes their control over your attention, your time, your thoughts. They feed on reactions, and when you stop reacting, you starve them. Let me ask you this. How many times have you wasted hours, days, even weeks replaying what someone said, drafting the perfect comeback, trying to prove yourself right? Did it ever bring you peace? Did it ever give you real closure? Or did it only pull you deeper into their story? Silence removes you from the story entirely. It frees you from the script they wrote for you. You're no longer the character they tried to cast. You're living in a completely different chapter, one they can't read. And here's the most liberating part. Your silence isn't for them. It's for you. It's a declaration to your own soul that you are no longer at war with what you cannot change. You've stopped negotiating with betrayal. You've stopped begging people to value what they never saw. You've stopped explaining yourself to ears that never intended to listen. That kind of silence becomes armor. Not to hide, but to protect the clarity you've earned. To preserve the stillness that allows you to choose your next move with intention instead of impulse. Think of the soldier who trains in discipline, not for show, but for readiness. That's what silence is, readiness. It means you no longer live at the mercy of provocation. You no longer let every insult drag you into battle. You no longer need to fight every false rumor, because you've realized the truth doesn't need defense. Time will reveal it. Your actions will reveal it. Your presence will reveal it. And presence is the ultimate weapon, because silence is not emptiness. Silence is presence, amplified. It's your way of saying, I don't need to prove myself. I live from principle, not reaction. Let me give you a challenge. The next time you feel the urge to respond, stop. Breathe. Ask yourself, will this response bring me closer to who I want to be, or will it pull me back into a version of me I've already outgrown? If the answer is the latter, stay silent. Let silence do the work, because every word you choose not to say becomes a seed for something greater. Every insult you refuse to answer becomes energy you redirect toward your purpose. Every moment you remain still becomes proof that you're mastering yourself, not them. And that mastery is priceless. So the next time betrayal tries to pull you into the arena of noise, remember this: you don't owe them your voice. You don't owe them your explanation. You owe yourself your peace. And silence is the highest form of peace. When you choose strategic silence, you don't just survive betrayal. You transcend it. You rise above the noise, and you become untouchable. That's the Stoic way. Not reaction, but restraint. Not chaos, but control. Not noise, but presence. And presence, in the end, always speaks louder than words. Rejection. It stings, doesn't it? The unanswered calls. The doors that shut in your face. The people you loved who decided you weren't worth staying for. It feels like loss. It feels like failure. It feels like proof that maybe you weren't enough. But here's the Stoic truth. Rejection is not the end. Rejection is refinement. It doesn't just bruise your heart, it strips away everything that was never truly you. Think about it. Before rejection, we wear masks. We soften our tone just to be tolerated. And yes, it burns. But in that fire, something powerful happens. The masks melt away. What remains is raw, honest, and real. Rejection doesn't diminish you. Epictetus once taught, remember that it is not he who gives abuse or blows who insults, but the view we take of these things as insulting. In other words, rejection only defines you if you agree to see yourself through the eyes of those who turned away. Their no does not make you unworthy. Their departure does not make you disposable. Rejection is not about your value, it's about your path. And sometimes, the only way forward is through the fire of being left behind. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman who gave everything to a man she loved, her time, her energy, even her dreams. And still, he left. He chose someone else. At first, she shattered. She couldn't breathe. But slowly, in the silence that followed, she asked herself a question she hadn't asked in years. Who was I before all this? Who was she before she bent herself to fit his expectations? Who was she before she traded her peace for his approval? Piece by piece, she began to rebuild. Not the old version of herself, a new one. One who didn't fear being alone. One who understood that her time was sacred. One who realized she never needed anyone's permission to live fully. That's the Stoic way. Not reaction, but reconstruction. You don't just recover from rejection, you rise through it. And in rising, you discover something surprising. What you lost wasn't stability. It was illusion. The illusion that approval gives you value. The illusion that loyalty always means reciprocity. The illusion that kindness will always be returned. These are comforting lies, but still lies. And when rejection burns those illusions away, it leaves you with solid ground at last. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look. You don't find that strength when everyone applauds you. You find it when the applause stops, when the phone goes silent, when the room empties, and you're left alone with yourself. That's when you realize, I can still stand. I can still continue. I don't need their permission to exist fully. Yes, in the beginning it feels like emptiness, like something essential has been ripped away. But that emptiness isn't loss. It's space. And in that space, you can finally build something real. Space for clarity. Space for boundaries. Space to choose who gets close and who doesn't. Rejection is a filter. It removes the people who never truly saw you. And though it hurts, it leaves behind the gift of solitude, the kind of solitude where you meet yourself again. Let me ask you this. How many times have you clung to people or places that were never truly right for you, simply because you feared rejection? How many times have you begged for doors to stay open, when in truth, they were blocking your path forward? Rejection closes those doors for you. And yes, it feels cruel. But in time, you'll see it was mercy. Here's the paradox. The very thing you feared most, being rejected, becomes the thing that sets you free. Free from begging, free from performing, free from needing constant validation. Rejection is not your punishment. It's your redirection. But let's be clear. Refinement is not glamorous. It's not loud. It's not flashy. Refinement happens in the shadows. It happens in long mornings when you sit with yourself. It happens in quiet evenings when you say no to people who only show up when it's convenient. It happens when you stop trying to get back what you lost and instead ask, what am I meant to become now? That's why Stoicism teaches, if you seek tranquility, do less. Do less proving. Do less chasing. Do less explaining. Your evolution doesn't require an audience. It only requires intention. And when you stop trying to prove your worth, something extraordinary happens. You begin to live it. You begin to carry yourself differently. You stop knocking on locked doors and start building your own. You stop begging to be seen and start rooting so deeply that those who are blind to your worth disqualify themselves. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. And with that clarity, rejection no longer defines you. It redirects you. It pushes you away from rooms you were never meant to enter, from people who were never capable of walking beside you. It strips away the version of you that needed applause and leaves behind the version that walks in peace, even if it means walking alone. That's the refinement rejection brings. So the next time rejection comes, don't see it as the end. See it as the fire that burns away the false layers, the fire that melts down who you thought you had to be, the fire that reveals the steel underneath. Because rejection doesn't just change your path, it reveals your true self, the self that doesn't depend on being chosen, the self that no longer performs for approval, the self that doesn't collapse when others turn away. That is the self you've been waiting to meet. So let rejection refine you. Let it strip you bare. Let it remove what was never truly yours. Because what remains clarity, boundaries, discipline, and self-respect is unshakable. And that unshakable self, that's who you were always meant to be. Pain. Most of us see it as the enemy. We spend our lives avoiding it, denying it, or trying to numb it. But what if pain wasn't here to destroy you? What if pain was here to sharpen you? The Stoics understood something that modern life often forgets. Pain doesn't just bruise the heart, it reshapes the soul. It doesn't just wound, it distills. It burns away what is unnecessary and leaves behind what is essential. Think back to the last time you were hurt. The betrayal, the loss, the rejection. They thought that pain would break you. They thought it would shatter your confidence, silence your voice, weaken your spirit. But here you are, listening, breathing, still moving. Which means the pain didn't end you. It refined you. Marcus Aurelius once said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. In other words, Pain is not in the event. Pain is in the meaning we assign to it. And here's the powerful truth. You get to choose what your pain means. When they hurt you, they expected the pain to scatter you, but instead it gathered you. They expected the pain to paralyze you, but instead it focused you. They expected the pain to turn you bitter, but instead it made you precise. That's the paradox of suffering. It introduces you to a version of yourself you never would have met in comfort. Here's a story. A man once built his life around the trust of a close friend. They worked together, dreamed together, shared victories, and then, one day, it all collapsed. Lies, betrayal, his name slandered, his business destroyed. At first, he tried to fight it. He defended himself. He argued. He explained. But nothing changed. And then, one morning, he stopped. Not because he gave up, but because he woke up. He realized he couldn't control the lies. He couldn't control the betrayal, but he could control how he showed up. His choices, his discipline, his craft. From that day forward, he stopped acting from wounded pride and started acting from inner clarity. And slowly, he rebuilt. That's what pain does when you face it through the Stoic lens. It doesn't make you cold. It makes you focused. It doesn't strip you of humanity. It strips you of illusions. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trial." Your pain was friction, necessary tension between who you were and who you must now become. The people who hurt you, they may never understand what they gave you. They thought they marked you forever, with wounds. What they actually did was carve out the unnecessary, leaving behind a version of you that is leaner, cleaner, more exact. Pain shows you what you've been relying on. It exposes the weak foundations, the false expectations, the fragile dependencies. And when those crumble, you're forced to rebuild this time. Not on feelings, not on the shaky approval of others, but on principle, on values. Let me ask you, what did your last pain teach you? Did it show you who your real friends are? Did it reveal where you had ignored the red flags? Did it strip away an illusion you were too comfortable to question? That's the gift. Pain is a teacher that comfort can never replace. The Stoics never glorified suffering. They didn't seek pain for pain's sake, but they knew that pain, when faced with courage, becomes the forge of character. Pain is not meant to be worn like a badge or used as a weapon. It is meant to be used wisely to sharpen your judgment, to expand your patience, to anchor your values. Otherwise, it's just noise. And here's the most freeing part. Your peace no longer depends on their apology. Your power doesn't wait for their understanding. Whether they change or not, whether they see what they did or rewrite the story, none of that matters anymore. Because you've moved beyond their reach. Not because you've climbed higher, but because you've gone deeper, into yourself, into your core. And once you find that depth, pain no longer intimidates you. You stop fearing the next loss. You stop resisting the next rejection. Because now you know nothing that can be taken from you is essential. What's essential is already yours. Your character, your reason, your integrity. That's why the Stoic doesn't become the wound. He feels it, yes, but he doesn't wear it as identity. He uses it. He learns from it. And when its lesson is finished, he lets it go. Think about this. The people who wounded you believed they defined you, but they didn't. You defined you with every quiet morning you got up anyway, with every step you took when no one was watching, with every time you chose patience over rage, silence over chaos, clarity over confusion. That's the part they'll never understand. They thought they destroyed you, but in reality, they introduced you to yourself, the self that is precise, the self that knows what matters and what doesn't, the self that can't be shaken by every rumor, every insult, every storm. So if the pain is still with you, don't rush to numb it. Don't rush to erase it. Sit with it. Learn from it. Let it carve you into something stronger, And when it's done teaching, release it. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've already remembered who you are. Because in the end, your pain did not make you weak. It taught you where not to waste your time. It showed you who doesn't deserve your trust. It sharpened your vision. It stripped you of illusions, and it anchored you in truth. So don't curse the pain. Don't glorify it either. Use it. Because in using it, you prove the ultimate Stoic lesson. Pain doesn't define you. What defines you is what you choose to do with it. And if you choose to rise, if you choose to let it refine instead of destroy, then your pain becomes the very tool that makes you unstoppable. Strength doesn't come from never being touched by pain. It comes from being tested by it, walking through the fire, and coming out not just alive but sharper, more focused, more disciplined than ever. That's why the Stoics believe discipline is the sharpest weapon a person can ever wield. Not anger, not revenge, not outbursts. Discipline. Because when everything falls apart, your plans, your relationships, your reputation, there is one thing no one can take from you. Your ability to govern yourself. That is power. That is freedom. Seneca once wrote, "The bravest sight in the world is to see a great man struggling against adversity." Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say attacking adversity. He didn't say raging against it. He said struggling against it, enduring, overcoming. That's discipline in action. Think about it. Anyone can explode in anger. Anyone can throw insults. Anyone can collapse in bitterness. That's easy. But to remain steady, to remain disciplined, to continue showing up for yourself even when the world turns against you, that is rare. That is dangerous in the Stoic sense. Your betrayers expect noise. They expect collapse. They expect chaos. What they don't expect is discipline. They don't expect you to rise with fewer words, firmer boundaries, and a gaze that no longer begs for understanding. They don't know what to do with someone who can walk away without burning bridges, because you've built a path that no longer needs them. That's what makes you untouchable. Not how loud you resist, but how deeply you refuse to be moved. Let me ask you, what's more powerful, lashing out for 10 seconds or living 10 years of calm, steady purpose? Which has more weight, proving a point in the heat of the moment, or embodying such control that your very presence proves the point without a single word? That's discipline. And discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't get applause. It happens in the quiet. It's waking up early when no one's watching. It's keeping your word even when it's inconvenient. It's walking away from chaos without explaining yourself. It's training your mind daily, like a soldier preparing not for show but for readiness. Think of a soldier at dawn. No audience, no applause, just discipline. He sharpens his weapon, not for display, but for survival. That's what you're doing when you practice self-control. You're sharpening the sharpest weapon you own, yourself. Marcus Aurelius spoke of this as building a fortress within an invincible principle that cannot be shaken by public opinion, failure, betrayal, or even praise. When your strength is built on discipline, the world can only watch. It cannot enter. And yes, people will say you've changed. They'll call you distant, cold, unreachable. Let them. They're not wrong. You have changed, but not in the way they think. You didn't become hardened. You became refined. You didn't become closed. You became precise. You didn't become arrogant. You became sovereign. Sovereignty is the ultimate form of revenge. When you no longer need anything from those who wronged you, you've taken back all power. Not with resistance, but with refusal. Refusal to be dragged into small games. Refusal to let the past make your choices. Refusal to keep bleeding for people who never brought bandages. That's discipline. It's not about hiding emotion. The Stoic doesn't bury his heart. He trains it. He sharpens it. He turns every insult into reflection, every setback into redirection, every betrayal into purification. This is how you become truly dangerous, not to others, but to weakness within yourself. Because the undisciplined man is ruled by impulse. He reacts to every insult, chases every rumor, bends to every temptation. He's at the mercy of the world. But the disciplined man, he answers only to his values. He doesn't react. He chooses. And that choice, repeated day after day, builds a life no storm can tear down. So ask yourself, are you ruled by your impulses or do you rule them? When someone mocks you, do you lash out? When someone betrays you, do you beg for closure? Or do you remain silent, focused, grounded, knowing that your life, lived with integrity, will outlast their noise? That's why discipline is the sharpest weapon. It's the armor that protects your peace. It's the compass that points you forward when emotions try to drag you back. It's the sword that cuts through illusions, distractions, and lies. And here's the truth. Discipline doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. You stop asking for the road to be smooth and start training your legs to climb. You stop wishing people were more loyal and start refining your ability to walk alone with honor. You stop waiting for things to get lighter and start building the strength to carry them. That's the Stoic way. Not to seek comfort, but to seek growth. So if you want to know what true power looks like, don't look at the loudest person in the room. Don't look at the one throwing insults or flaunting wealth or demanding attention. Look at the one who can remain calm when provoked. The one who doesn't need to prove anything. The one who lives in alignment with their values. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. That's the dangerous one. That's the free one. The dangerous one, and that's what you can become. Not through rage, not through revenge, but through discipline. Because in the end, discipline is not about controlling the world. It's about controlling yourself. And once you master yourself, no betrayal, no rejection, no storm can ever truly harm you again. That's the edge. That's the sharpest weapon you will ever wield. Revenge. That word alone sparks fire in the heart. When someone hurts us, we imagine the day will rise in front of them. Successful, powerful, vindicated, and they'll regret ever crossing us. That's the fantasy. But the Stoics knew a greater truth. The final blow isn't loud. It isn't theatrical. It isn't even announced. The final blow is quiet resurrection. What does that mean? It means coming back not as who you were, not even as who they feared, but as someone entirely unrecognizable to the small minds that tried to bury you. Quiet resurrection isn't about proving anything to them. It's about proving everything to yourself. It's when you rebuild, not out of spite, but out of truth. When you rise, not with noise, but with clarity. And by the time they notice, it's already too late. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's resurrection. The betrayal they thought would end you becomes the soil that nourishes you. The rejection that tried to silence you becomes the silence that made you unshakable. And here's the paradox. The people who wronged you expect retaliation. They expect rage. They expect you to chase them, to argue, to demand closure. What they never expect and what they can never recover from is indifference. That moment when you can walk past them, look them in the eye, and feel absolutely nothing. That's victory. That's the final blow. Because nothing unsettles a betrayer more than realizing their actions no longer have power over you. Their weapon, the pain they inflicted, has lost its sting. You took it, transformed it, and turned it into strength. And now they can't touch you. Think about the people in history who became legends. Was it because they shouted louder than their enemies? No. It was because they kept walking, kept building, kept living with relentless discipline and focus until their lives themselves became the answer. That's what quiet resurrection does. It turns your existence into a statement. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman who had been abandoned by the very people she thought she could never live without. She cried, she grieved, she broke. But instead of chasing them, instead of begging for explanations, she turned inward. She started eating better. She built herself back, brick by brick. Months passed, then years. One day, she ran into the very people who left her behind. They looked at her, confused. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't broken. She was radiant, steady, whole. They couldn't understand it. They expected to see ashes. Instead, they saw a resurrection. That's the power of rising quietly. By the time they realize, it's too late. And this is what terrifies them most. Not your retaliation, but your resurrection. Because retaliation still acknowledges them. Resurrection erases them. Retaliation says, you still matter to me. Resurrection says, you're not even in my story anymore. It is see. That's why quiet transformation is the ultimate revenge. Because it doesn't just hurt their pride, it renders them irrelevant. Seneca once said, he who is brave is free, and resurrection is the bravest act of all. It's refusing to let the worst in others kill the best in you. It's choosing to walk away, not in bitterness, but in completion. It's realizing you don't need to stay in the room where the betrayal happened. You can build a new house, on new ground, with new strength. And here's the truth. They will see it. Even if you never say a word, they will feel it. They'll feel it in your calm. They'll feel it in your focus. They'll feel it in your absence. And they'll wonder, how did this person rise from the ashes we left behind? The answer? You didn't become harder. You became cleaner. You didn't become colder. You became clearer. Your values are sharper. Your time is guarded. Your energy is sacred. And what they once had access to, they no longer even qualify for. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. Alignment with who you were always meant to be. And when you live in that alignment, you don't need to broadcast it. You don't need to post about it. You don't need to defend your growth. Legends aren't made by explaining their story to doubters. Legends are made by finishing the story in silence and letting excellence speak for itself. So if you're wondering, should I say something? Should I defend myself? Should I make them understand? Don't. Let your life be the statement. Let your discipline be the evidence. Let your presence, your peace, your stillness be the weight they never counted on. That's resurrection. Quiet, steady, unshakable. And here's the most beautiful part. Quiet resurrection isn't just about leaving them behind. It's about finally coming home to yourself. It's about remembering the strength you always had, the clarity you always carried, the discipline that was waiting to be awakened. The people who betrayed you don't get the final word. The pain doesn't get the final word. Your resurrection does. So, rise, not with noise, not with revenge, but with quiet certainty that you've already won because you've already outgrown the story they tried to trap you in. That's the final blow. And it doesn't come with fire. It comes with silence. There comes a point on the Stoic path when you stop asking to be seen. You stop begging to be understood. You stop trying to prove anything at all. Instead, you simply live in alignment with who you are meant to be. That's the final form of strength. Not noise, not applause, not validation. Alignment. Because when you are aligned, you no longer chase approval. You no longer confuse attention with value. You no longer bend yourself to fit into places you've outgrown. You walk steady. You walk free. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. That's the heart of it. Stop talking about peace and live in a way that protects it. Stop debating your worth and simply act from it. Stop demanding recognition and let your presence reveal who you are." The world looks for legends to admire, but the Stoic doesn't seek admiration. The Stoic seeks alignment, to live rightly, regardless of who's watching. And here's the paradox. When you stop performing, your life becomes far more powerful. You walk into rooms with less to prove and more to offer. You no longer need the spotlight, not because you fear it, but because you don't need it to feel real. Your sense of self has outgrown applause. Think about this. How many times did one text, one comment, one cold shoulder from someone you cared about ruin your entire day? How many times did you let other people's silence define your worth? That's not freedom. That's bondage. But when you are aligned, their words, their silence, their approval, their rejection, none of it controls you anymore. You return to what you can actually govern: your choices, your values, your actions. That's inner authority. That's sovereignty. And sovereignty is the ultimate form of revenge. Because the moment you no longer need anything from those who betrayed you, you've taken back all power. Not by domination, but by refusal. Refusal to shrink, refusal to explain, refusal to revisit what you've already released. That's what alignment looks like. Let me tell you a story. A man once burned with the need to prove everyone wrong. Every late night at the office, every workout, every dollar he earned was fueled by voices of doubt in his head. And yes, he achieved a lot, but still, he was restless. Until one day, the fire shifted. He realized he no longer needed to prove anything. He didn't need them to see. He needed himself to see. So he stopped training for revenge. He trained for discipline. He stopped building to impress. He built to last. And in that shift, he discovered something rare. That's what living aligned gives you. Self-respect without applause. Progress without announcement. Strength without drama. Seneca once said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." And this is the lesson: to live in such alignment with your values that no storm outside can shake the calm inside. But don't misunderstand. Living aligned doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean closing your heart. It means elevating your standards. It means choosing connections more slowly, choosing peace over popularity, choosing purpose over performance. Some people will say, "You've changed." And they're right. You didn't fight this hard, walk through this much fire, and rebuild yourself from ashes just to stay recognizable to those who misuse the old version of you. Of course you've changed. You were supposed to. That's not arrogance. That's growth. And here's the truth. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will clap. Alignment is about being unshakable. And when you are unshakable, life feels different. You don't panic when people leave. You don't crumble when plans fail. You don't chase closure because you already carry it. You move slower, but deeper. Simpler, but stronger. That's what walking in quiet strength looks like. Not because you have something to hide, but because you've finally found something too valuable to waste your time, your focus, your soul. And when you live from that place, you become rare. Rare in your steadiness, rare in your clarity, rare in your refusal to let the world drag you into its chaos. That's why the ones who betrayed you will feel your absence more than your anger. They will feel your calm more than your noise. Because the truth is, the strongest statement you'll ever make is not your retaliation, but your alignment. So let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them reach out and meet your absence. You don't owe them access. You don't owe them explanation. You don't owe them closure. What you owe is to the part of you that waited patiently to rise. What you owe is to your own becoming. And now you are rising, not out of spite, not out of revenge. That is the final form of Stoic strength. To live so aligned that nothing can shake you. To stop shrinking to fit the comfort of those who feared your growth. To embody peace so deeply that even betrayal cannot disturb it. So if you take anything from this journey, let it be this. The greatest victory is not being remembered. The greatest victory is remaining unshaken. Walk forward with clarity. Walk forward with discipline. Walk forward in silence. Because when you live aligned, you don't just survive betrayal, you transcend it. And that, my friend, is how you become untouchable. So, What have we uncovered together? From betrayal to rejection, from pain to silence, every step has pointed to one truth. Stoic strength is not about conquering others. It's about mastering yourself. That's the essence of Stoicism self-mastery. It's the discipline to remain calm when the world shouts at you. It's the silence that terrifies those who expected you to scream. It's the refusal to let betrayal define you, and instead, letting it redirect you. Because betrayal doesn't end you, rejection doesn't ruin you, pain doesn't destroy you. All of it, when filtered through a disciplined mind, becomes transformation. It's not punishment, it's redirection. It's not the end of your story, it's the necessary turn that leads you to where you were always meant to go. And here's the most liberating truth of all. You don't need them to understand. You don't need them to apologize. You don't need them to validate the journey you've taken. The moment you stop craving their recognition is the moment you realize you were never walking for them anyway. You're walking for you. Your task now is not to convince anyone. Your task is to continue forward with a clear mind and an untouchable soul. To walk in silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because your life itself has become the answer. Ask yourself this: what weighs more? The noise of someone who betrayed you, or the peace you've built in their absence? What matters more? Their opinion, or your alignment with your own values? The Stoics would remind us, peace is not found in being liked or in being understood. Peace is found in living according to principle, and principle is untouchable. So don't waste another second chasing closure. Don't waste another ounce of energy explaining your growth to ears that cannot hear. Let your life do the talking. Let your calm be your shield. Let your presence be the proof. This is the quiet revolution they never saw coming. Not a revolution of rage, but of resilience. And now, the only question left is, will you keep rising? If you've walked with me through this message, if something in you feels awake, stronger, steadier, then take a moment to mark it. Comment the words, "still rising," not for me, for yourself. As a declaration that no betrayal, no rejection, no pain will ever be the final chapter of your story. Because you are still rising, and you will continue to rise. So let this be the moment. Subscribe to stay close to content that sharpens your mind and protects your peace. Join a community that doesn't need noise to grow stronger, but chooses silence, discipline, and alignment as the path. And as you walk on from here, remember this: you don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't need to be understood. All you need is to remain unshaken. That's the final form of Stoic strength. To walk forward with clarity, with discipline, and with peace that no storm can touch. So keep rising, quietly, patiently, powerfully, and let your life, not your words, be the answer.